恭敬大德三听，为四法为记一切众生，经转妙法门，教导我们如何了生脱死，离苦得乐，速证无生。Will the Sangha with great virtue, out of compassion, for the sake of this assembly and all living beings, please turn the wonderful Dharma wheel to teach us how to leave suffering and attain bliss, and end birth and death, and quickly realize non-birth.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one. Namo sadanto suchetoye alahati sanmyao sanbuddhoche. 无上甚深微妙法，百千万劫难遭遇。我今见闻得受持，愿解如来真实义。Supreme and wondrous Dharma, subtle and profound, rarely is encountered, even in a billion eons. But now we see and hear it and accept it reverently. May we truly understand the Buddha's actual meaning. Namo, quelling disasters, lending life, medicine master, Buddha 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 Namo. Quelling disasters, lending life, medicine master, Buddha, medicine master, does come one, medicine master, does come one, medicine master, does come one, medicine master, does come one. Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, Noble Master, and all good knowing advisors, welcome back to our exploration of the Dharma through the lens of the Medicine Master Buddha Sutra. Today is class number 94. Wow. Okay. And so for today, we have a few outstanding things. We have Julie's story, a short story to share, and I will call on you, Julie, at the end of the class. And then from last week as well, we have Sui Ling's question about lighting of oil lamps, and that was connected to Ron's question about plaques. And Ron, if you have any further questions or you need some elaboration, because I know I just gave a very short answer, either unmute your mic or just type it into the chat box. Same goes for everyone. If you have any questions, just type it into the chat box. And then we have also Saha, who will share her experience about the what's going on in Iran. And Saha has also asked from a Dharma point of view, how can we view the events in Iran? Because Saha is culturally Iranian. Okay, so we have that towards the end of the class. And for now, what's going to happen is we're going to continue our story. What story? Okay, let me get this. Okay, we're going to continue our story about Mara. And why Mara? Because Mara, okay, if you look at your screen, sorry for the back and forth of the slides. Mara lives in what is known as the highest and the sixth. The highest heaven in the desire realm, which is the sixth heaven, is known as the heaven of the transformation of others' bliss, or in Sanskrit, Paranimitavasavatin. I'm not pronouncing that very well, but you get the idea. Okay, so heaven of the transformation of others' bliss. And Mara is not, sometimes people refer to Mara as the king. Um, there is another, I'm not sure how they, if there's any difference, but actually there's an official king of this heaven that appears um, in the sutras when the Buddha, uh, when the gods from the heaven, they attend to the Buddha and hear the Dharma. They are represented by, there's a particular god from this heaven. Mara resides in this heaven, but he's kind of like his own thing. You know, he doesn't. I'm quite sure he doesn't. Not under the influence of anyone. Yeah, Mara is pretty independent. So what happened was last week. A quick recap. Excuse me. This is from the sutra called the Quintessence of the Sun Sutra. It's a highly, how you say, engaging sutra. It has a very good mix of the principles from the Pali Canon as well as Mahayana, very strong Mahayana influences as well. So the story started after the Buddha had taught for quite a bit. Then there was a king called King Bimbisara who has appeared in many of our stories before. And he requested the Buddha for to show us how you say. He says the world of the Buddhas, the domain of the Buddhas, meaning the Dharma realm. So then Shakyamuni Buddha gave a very miraculous show where all the living beings, okay, all the living beings could see. Oh, excuse me, let me mute my mic. Sorry about that. And then all the living beings could see not just our entire Saha world, which is made up of a, let me see, 1 million, let me see, 1,000, 1 billion, okay, 1 billion worlds in our world within Shakyamuni Buddha's body. But let me show you the slide. It says, the entire Buddha realm of Saha and all the trillions of worlds with their 4 continents, trillions of Mount Sumerus, etc., they all could be seen within the body of the Daskam One. Yeah, so it was a very miraculous thing. So while that was happening, okay, as I go through the slides, the evil Mara saw all these Buddhas and all their retinues within the body, and he became really unhappy. So he started getting really distressed, very restless. They said he started to run back and forth, to disappear, only to reappear again, to run and race around, to gape, laugh, sick, lick his mouth. Basically, he was very restless. And usually a god in this heaven, the sixth desire heaven, they're very composed. They're very chill. They're very relaxed. Nothing upsets them. But this managed to get to Mara and made him very afflicted. So one of his retinue asked him what was going on. And then I'm going to just run through the slides because we went through these slides last week. And then Mara said he can see the powerful Buddha and how that has affected him, because why? Everyone has gone to see the Buddha. So his whole realm, everyone who is usually under Mara's influence, has gone to see the Buddha, who can show them a way out of affliction. In other words, a way out of affliction means a way out of Mara's influence. So he no longer can have influence on these people if they continue to listen to the Buddha. So he complained. He said, uh, he said 10 millions of beings, tens of millions of beings have arrived there from the 10 directions, from places infinite like space. They have circumambulated him and are now sitting around him. All the Maras and their retinues have also gone for refuge in him. So even people like him, his own kind, have gone to the Buddha. And he said, even my armies have disappeared. I cannot find them anywhere. So that's why he becomes so restless. Okay, so let's get back to our story. I don't quite remember where we stopped last week. I think it was here. If I'm just repeating myself in too much detail, someone just remind me. Okay. So this compatriot of Mara called Celestial Tree, he proposed to Mara, he said, all of us, okay, let's wear our strongest armor and let's go and attack the Shakyamuni Buddha with their mighty swords and lances. And then Mara cautions them. He says, if you, he said, so Mara is very cunning. He said, better if you go there yourself and take refuge in him. Then you can attack him. Whereas he himself is bound by tight fetters. So he's telling them to trick the Buddha by first making the Buddha think that they're going there to take refuge. And then Celestial Tree says, whatever method we might use, it will not be enough to overcome our enemy. Yet if we fool him by assuming a friendly appearance, we will be able to kill him. So Mara says that he has thought about going there in disguise, in a friendly appearance, because Mara can take on different. It's like Guanyin Bodhisattva. He can transform himself into different bodies. And then he said, but the Buddha would be able to see through him. He said the Buddha would see the frightening and stinking rotten corpses around our necks, meaning the Buddha can see them for who they are. So what did they do? So they hatched a plan to get other people to fight for them instead. So who did they think of? They thought of the dragons. So if you remember a few classes ago, there's this story about the Buddha wanting to go to a certain place, and he and the monks were flying over a certain place, and underneath them were, depending on the sutra where you read it from, there were either two dragons or one single dragon, a dragon king, and he or they, okay, whether it was two or one, were not disciples of the Buddha. And when they saw the Buddha and his disciples flying over them, his Arhat monks flying, the Dragon King got really, really upset. He said, the dust from their feet are falling on our heads. He said, how can they do that? So he transformed himself into a giant snake, and he coiled himself around Mount Sumeru, the destination of the Buddha. And because he was a giant snake like a cobra, he spread his head and covered the light from the sun and the moon and plunged the whole of Mount Sumeru into darkness. And then of all the Buddha's disciples, only was it Maha Kashyapa or Maha Magdalena, the one foremost in powers? I think it was Maha Magdalena. Yes, Maha Magdalena. I'm 99% sure I'm right. Okay, so it was Maha Magdalena. So being 99% right, that 1% will probably turn out to be 100%. Anyway, so someone please check for me the Buddha's foremost disciple in spiritual powers. Is it Mahakashyapa or Maha Magdalena? So anyway, out of the Buddha's disciples, only Maha Magdalena had the ability to subdue the Dragon King. Remember that story? Okay, so that's why Mara thought about the dragons, because not all the dragons were disciples of the Buddha, right? Okay, so what did he do? Celestial Tree then raised his arm toward 100,000 soldiers wearing armor and proclaimed, "We are going to the abode of the Nagas," meaning the dragons. "We will make them wage war against Gautama." Okay, Gautama meaning the Buddha. And because they're not respectful of the Buddha at all, they address him by his name. Say, "We are going to wage war against Gautama and kill him. We must convince the Nagas to become our allies." However, none of the soldiers were able to move, so the leader Celestial Tree began to weep, and his hairs stood on end. With his palm joined, he supplicated the evil Mara. He said, "We are unable to go anywhere. This is the powerful magical power of Gautama. This is the trickery of the sage. Our legs are bound and dirt emerges from our bodies. Please do something to overcome our enemy." So they are unable to overcome the, how would I say? They are unable to use their normal powers against the Buddha. And in return, because they don't really understand what's going on, they are blaming the Buddha for their predicament. Okay, all right. Let's move on to the next story. Okay, this is a long story. This story will probably take the entire of our class, and probably we need next week to finish the story. And one of the reasons I'm sharing this story in its full, not even in its full. I'm only sharing maybe like 60% of the story. Is because it's very interesting. Number one. Number two, it really shows why the importance of being born during the Buddha's time, when there is a Buddha around in the world. Because why? A Buddha is able, no matter what you become in the future, a Buddha is able to see if you have any good roots. It doesn't matter if you have forgotten about your good roots. The Buddha is able to see if you have any good roots and bring rise the conditions for your roots to come forth, for your karmic seeds to come forth and bring you back on the path again. Okay, and if you have a question of how it happens, well, just listen to the story. Okay, so Mara, who is increasingly becoming more and more afflicted, he says, "Now I must by all means bring to my mind, let me read it properly. It says, "Now I must by all means bring to mind my demonic power so that I can address all the Nagas in their abodes and make them upset and irate." At that moment, Mara manifested flesh flies, mosquitoes, and hornets in all the abodes of the Nagas, and he filled these places with disgusting smells. He made dirt emerge from the Nagas' bodies, and everyone became unhappy. Upset, all the Nagas, the great Nagas, the Naga women, boys, and girls started to look around and wonder who is making fun of us. So Mara, so used to trickery, instead of going to the dragons and I don't know, explaining to them what's going on and trying to get the dragons on his side, his plan is very is full of trickery. Is very how you say? There's a word for it. Anyway, what he does is he thinks that someone is messing with the dragons. So first he makes the dragons really unhappy through his power. Okay, and then he wants the dragons to think that it is the Buddha himself that is causing the dragons to be uncomfortable. So the dragons did not understand what was happening, and as they could not see anyone. So overwhelmed by anger, all the dragons, the great dragons, the dragon women, boys and girls in this four-continent world left their residences. So four-continent world, we've covered this before. We are human beings. Our race of human beings are found in the continent of Jambudvipa. And then there are three other continents as well, where there are also human beings, but they are kind of different from us. So in the Buddhist cosmic world, a small world like ours has four continents. So and there are dragons in all the four continents. So the two Naga kings, Nanda and Upananda, these are the two kings that were upset with the Buddha flying over them in another story, also left their residences with retinues of many hundreds and thousands. On the summit of a mountain called Kala Tiya, there is a sacred site of wise sages, an area of 40,000 leagues, ornamented with the divine precious substances. The dragons entered that sacred site of wise sages to find shelter. So this place, this mountain called Kalatiya, is located on Mount Sumeru, and you can only get there through spiritual powers. If only you can fly, and I guess also if you have divine sight to be able to see it, because human beings can fly too. We can get on an aeroplane and fly, but there is no way we can get to this place. So that's where all the dragons went, to this sacred place. Then, however, as soon as they entered that place, their bodies became as small as the pin used to apply ointment to their eyes. So basically, they became really small. But the sutra says, or rather, this story was told by Shakyamuni Buddha. Shakyamuni Buddha says that because they were very, very angry, they still thought that their bodies were as big as, or were as large as Mount Sumeru. Out of their ignorance, they could not see that their bodies had shrunk. But when they went to that place, they could neither call out nor leave that place. So they just sat there overcome by misery and anger. So they were still plagued by all the flies and dirt coming out from the bodies that was conjured up by Mara. And when they went to that place, they were still afflicted, but they could not leave. So I guess their misery kind of doubled. So the sutra says, similarly, all 56,000 Naga kings or Jambudvipa, including the great Naga king Sagara and his retinue of many trillions, together with many hundreds of thousands of great Nagas in each of the 84,000 continents and the trillions of retinue, they all entered that sacred site of wise sages to find shelter. So all the dragons who were not with the Buddha at the time, this is what happened to them. Okay, so next time, if you have a opportunity to listen to the Dharma, always go and listen to the Dharma. Okay, so at that time, within these 4 continents and 8 million other continents, there was not a single Naga or great Naga, whether born from an egg, from a womb, from heat and moisture, or miraculously, whether male, female, boy, or girl, who did not immediately come to the sacred site of wise sages. They all entered that place to find shelter. So all the dragons went there. This term, I just read, whether born from an egg, from a womb, etc. Those are the different ways that a dragon is born into this world. And that's why there are so many different kinds of dragons, just like how we have different species that are born through eggs, through the womb, and all that, through moisture. Same goes for the class of beings known as dragons. So dragons, within their same class of beings, there are very, very different forms of dragons. So as soon as they entered that place, all of them, okay, every single one of them, no matter whether they were great king or, as we will find out later, a very pitiful dragon, became as small as a pin. Okay, all right. So then Mara saw that all those dragons had gathered in their realm. When he realized that their bodies had become small, he became exceedingly agitated, distressed, and scared. So it wasn't Mara's plan for the dragons to shrink. I'm not sure how that happened. The sutra doesn't really explain it. I guess, yeah, the sutra doesn't really explain it. I don't really have a way to explain it either, or to think about it. But that wasn't Mara's plan, apparently. So he became more frustrated. He said to his own faction, he said, "Great demons, all the dragons have moved away. They have gathered at that sacred site of wise sages, and their power, appearance, and magnificence have decreased. Look at the overwhelming power of their spiritual practitioner." So what they thought of getting all the dragons to trick them into fighting the Buddha, they realized that all the dragons became like mini, really small dragons. And what can really small things do? They don't have any power anymore. Okay. And then he blamed the Buddha for that. Okay. So another Mara leader named Support of Discipline then said, he said, do not be dejected. He said, listen to me. So he had a plan. He said, this is a game of the dragons. Think about that great assembly that will crush the son of the Sakyas, meaning the Buddha, into dust. So Mara replied, he said, clever one, quickly go to that place and generate enthusiasm in all those groups of Nagas. If they are able to kill the son of the Shakyas and his assembly, the domain of the dragons will become most eminent. So that's their plan now. So the Mara leader, Support of Discipline, then departed from the abode of Mara together with 80,000 creatures. So this particular Mara was able to get there. So along the way, this is a part of the story that we don't need to share, but along the way, what happened was the Buddha, after displaying, who was in the middle of displaying all the trillions of worlds within his body, stopped. So when the Buddha stopped, the Maras who were traveling to the dragons, they thought that, oh, Shakyamuni Buddha has become weak. He said, oh, he's stopped displaying his spiritual powers. Maybe he's become tired and weak. So they decided to go where the Buddha was instead. So that was their plan. Maybe they can attack the Buddha directly right now. Okay, all right. So they went there, and then the Buddha addressed the leader, the Mara leader, Support of Discipline. He said, I have crossed the river of existence. I am free from craving, and I teach the Dharma to beings out of affection for them. A long time ago in cyclic existence, that means within birth and death, you practice for the sake of awakening. You accomplish generosity and discipline since the time of Dipankara Buddha. Who is Dipankara Buddha? Well, we're going to, when I answer Sri Ling's question later, we'll find out who is Dipankara Buddha. You have venerated 10 billion Buddhas, and I have given a prophecy to you for the sake of the Supreme Vehicle. You have trained in the ascetic practices and thoroughly meditated on the absence of marks. I'm giving you pure eyes, so remember your past lives. So, when this Mara leader, Support of Discipline, full of hatred and anger towards the Buddha and trying to destroy the Buddha and the Buddha's followers, was in front of the Buddha kind of knew him better than he knew himself. And the Buddha was able to tell him of what he used to do before that he has totally forgotten. And then the Buddha says, he says, I'm giving you pure eyes, so remember your past lives. Because Support of Discipline, who is a Mara leader now, used to really practice the Dharma. You know, he practiced during the time of Dipankara Buddha. He had true intentions to end affliction. He worshipped, he venerated 10 billion Buddhas. That's a long time. And he even received a prediction for awakening. Okay. So at that moment, aroused by his past lives, aspirations, and worship of the Buddhas, and by all his roots of virtue, the Mara leader, Support of Discipline, was humbled like scattered grass in front of the Blessed One. So basically, the Buddha made him remember his past lives, of all the good deeds, of all the wholesomeness and virtue he had, of the people he used to be before, who was striving towards awakening. And all this were just his past seeds in his 8 consciousness, in his repository of karmic seeds. They were still there. And apparently the Buddha was able to, for all these seeds to manifest and for him to remember his past lives. So with tears in his eyes, tears in whose eyes? The Mara leader, Support of Discipline. He joined his spouse and said, respected Blessed One, I am like a child, a drunk person, or someone who is mentally disturbed. I confess my faults. Respected Blessed One, I confess my faults. I now remember that for a full uncountable eon, I previously engaged in the practice of the 6 perfections with great effort in order to reach unsurpassed and perfect awakening. I respectfully cultivated roots of virtue. Okay, let's continue. Okay, what are the 6 perfections here that you see in the last line, second last line? The 6 perfections are also known as the 6 paramitas. and they are the practice of bodhisattvas. You will find two lists of paramitas. One is the 6 paramitas, the other one is the 10 paramitas, and they're both attributed to the bodhisattva practice. Don't ask me what they are now because I'm not prepared to explain what the 6 are, but one of them is generosity. That's the only one I can remember right now. I think precepts, generosity, and 4 more. Yeah, makes up the 6 perfections. Sorry about that. Okay. Then he recounted, he said, once during the lifetime of the dust gone Kashyapa, there was a monk, there was a Buddha named Kashyapa. He said, a monk was requesting a discourse on the vehicle of the hearers. Without thinking, I then spoke these evil words. So he said, alas, this exposition on the hearer's discourses in the presence of followers of the great vehicle, given while assuming the appearance of a spiritual practitioner, is demonic. So what was that? What's all this? So he remembered that he was in the assembly of the Buddha Kashyapa, and there was a monk who requested a sutra from the Pali canon, okay, from the Theravada canon, as what we know now to be the Theravada canon, okay, the sutras that were spoken to sound hearers. So sound hearers are people who practice for the sake of ending their own afflictions. You want to become an arhat. You are not ready yet to walk the bodhisattva path because which is a very natural thing to think about. It's very hard to think about saving others if you can't even save yourself yet. So people who have not planted the Mahayana seed of wanting to be a bodhisattva so that they can save other people belong in this class of hearers. So the Buddha spoke the Dharma according to their potential, and most of these sutras within what is classified as a sound hearer level of sutras are about how to end your own suffering. They don't really speak about what do you do when after you end your own suffering, how to help other people. They don't really talk about that. Okay, that's not the main theme. Not like in Mahayana sutras where it's all about the saving other beings. Okay, so for people like us, okay, what's the best thing to do, Theravada or Mahayana? Well, the answer is yes. Answer is both. Why? Because the Theravada sutras gives you the ability, the understanding, and the discipline to end suffering. Okay, whereas the Mahayana sutras are, how you say, the Mahayana sutras are like a compass for your heart. When you combine the aspirations of the Mahayana, meaning the intentions that you form in your heart, the vows that you make, when you combine that with the understanding of how to end suffering and the discipline from the sound hearer canon or the Theravada canon, that's where true practice is. If you have only one, then let's say if you only have the Theravada vehicle, then you are practicing to save yourself, but you are isolating yourself from everyone else that you care about. You don't think about them. They don't really factor in the practice. If you only have Mahayana, let's say you only study Mahayana sutras, but you don't understand the sound hearer canon, you have a lot of heart. You want to become a Buddha, you want to become a Bodhisattva, you are inspired by Guanyin Bodhisattva, Earth-Star Bodhisattva, you want to save all living beings, but you don't even know how to save yourself. You don't even know how to concentrate your mind and sit quietly, and how to navigate through your own demons to end your own affliction. So when you combine both, when you combine the discipline and the know-how of the Theravada with the great vows and intentions of the Mahayana, then you are practicing true Dharma. Okay? Not everyone will agree with that, but not everyone has also investigated both canons, the Theravada and the Mahayana canons as well. Okay, so what this support of discipline, is that his name? Support of discipline. Let me go back one slide and check his name again. Yes, support of discipline. So this Mara general support of discipline recalled how he became a Mara. Okay, because in his past life, when he was in this assembly, and a monk had requested a Theravada teaching, he looked down on that monk. He said, "This exposition on the hearer's discourse." So, hearer or sound hearers means the collection of teachings for people who want to end their own afflictions. He says, in the presence of followers of the great vehicle, so probably there were great bodhisattvas um, in that assembly listening to the Dharma. He said it's demonic. Why? Because some sutras do say that do not go back to the small vehicle sutras, but I think some people misinterpret that. So anyway, that was his mindset at that time, to the extent that he called it demonic. Why? Because you're neglecting the Mahayana sutras or the great vows, so to speak. So he said, if I had not said those evil words at that time, I would have received a prophecy for unsurpassed and perfect awakening. However, due to the karmic residue of that action, I was born in the abode of Mara after I died. For 570 million years, and then 100,000 more, I did not have a single thought aimed at unsurpassed and perfect awakening. So what need is there to mention practicing the sublime states? So basically, when he looked down on the sound hearer vehicle, it showed that he did not understand the great vehicle either. Because true practitioners of the great vehicle, they know that everyone is at different levels. Just like how when we learn the Dharma, there's a point where before, where we didn't know anything about the Dharma, and then there was a point where we started to learn about the Dharma, and everything was very confusing. And slowly, step by step, we learn a bit more, we learn a bit more, we learn a bit more. Like the saying, how do you, I'm not sure if it's a real saying, I think it is. It says, like, how do you eat an elephant? And the answer is a bite at a time. So you can only chew as much as your mouth can allow you to chew, and then you swallow. And then you take another bite, because that's the only thing you can do. You can't do more than that. And eventually, you realize that you have eaten the entire elephant. Okay. So, having realized his mistake, he apologized and then exclaimed, he said, "From now on, I would rather remain in the hell realms for as long as I have so far been circling in samsara than let my mind stray from unsurpassed and perfect awakening." So, having remembered his past lives, thanks to the compassion of the Buddha, he has repented for his mistakes. Then the Buddha replied, he said, "Excellent, noble son. Those who dedicate themselves to the mind set on awakening with a compassionate attitude are making the most outstanding gift to the great guides." Great guides are, I guess, the Buddhas. It says, "Even the merit of lighting lamps as big as Mount Sumeru in front of the great guides would not match that heap of merit. Therefore, adopt this attitude." So Sri Ling, look, even this sutra is speaking to your question. Okay, the Buddha says, even the merit of lighting lamps as big as Mount Sumeru in front of the great guides would not match that heap of merit. Okay. So it says, "Surrender this strong negative karmic action to me. Remember that the aggregates and elements are devoid of concepts and marks. They are conditioned. Then you will become a leader with supreme qualities." Okay. So this second passage of what the Buddha said reminds me of what Shufu said before. I read that Shufu would tell his disciples, he says, "Give me all your bad habits." You know, Shufu said, I'm usually not greedy for things, but if you want to give me your bad habits, I will gladly take them away from you. So when I read this in the sutra, it reminded me of what Shufu said. So it says, "Surrender this strong negative karmic action to me." All right. Okay. So also the Buddha said, "Remember that the aggregates and elements are devoid of concept and marks. They are conditioned." What does that mean? Well, aggregates and elements are what makes up your reality. When you open your eyes, when you smell, when you see, when you hear, everything you touch, everything you're aware of to be your world, those are aggregates and elements. So the Buddha says they're all conditioned, meaning they are devoid of concepts and marks. Ultimately, their true existence is empty. So the Buddha is pointing him towards the mark of true existence. Okay, and then a very interesting thing happens in the sutra. And this part of the sutra, it refers to support or discipline no longer as a Mara leader, but as a bodhisattva. Okay, so at that very moment, the bodhisattva, great being, support of discipline, achieved the concordant acceptance with respect to phenomena. Then he stood up, draped the body of the Blessed One or the Buddha with garlands made of invaluable pearl jewelry and asked, said, what are the qualities that will cause us to quickly understand all phenomena and destroy all views as if they were water bubbles? What are the qualities that will cause us to achieve the supreme acceptance set on awakening and quickly liberate all beings? What should the bodhisattvas cultivate for the sake of abandonment? Okay, what does this mean? Okay, his first question, quickly understand all phenomena and destroy all views as if they were water bubbles, meaning how to understand what's going on. All phenomena means everything that's going on in this world. What goes on? Gravity, light, the people being born, planets. What else? The way your mind works, what makes you happy, what makes you sad, what brought you into this world, and what did you do that is going to take you away from this world, where you're going to go, how you're going to come back, everything, everything about existence. That's what he meant by all phenomena. And then destroy all views are the way you think about things, all your firmly held beliefs that actually hold you back from true awakening. So he's asking that question and says, what are the qualities that will cause us to achieve the supreme acceptance set on awakening and quickly liberate all beings? That's called the Bodhi resolve. How does one bring forth the Bodhi resolve? And once you bring back the Bodhi resolve, why do you want to bring forth the Bodhi resolve? The Bodhi resolve is when you come to a point where you recognize what's going on in your life and you say, you have this feeling, I'm going through this over and over again, and it seems rather meaningless. And you become so inspired by the examples set by the Buddhas, by the Bodhisattvas, by Shufu, for example, and you realize that's the path you want to take. From now on, you want to save yourself and all living beings. And all these things in life, they don't really matter that much anymore to you. Their hold on you has decreased, and this is a result of sustained practice throughout lifetimes. You reach that point, and then from that point onwards, everything that you do is for the sake of the Dharma. Everything that you do, every act of generosity, every act of holding the precept, every act of kindness and compassion towards all living beings that you are able to practice, the intention behind that is not that you want to be a good person or you want blessings. It's because you want to end birth and death and you want to achieve Buddhahood. So that's called the Bodhi resolve. And then when that really happens, okay, you do not fall anymore. You do not regress from your path. So that's the question he's asking. Okay, so in one of our classes yesterday, we also talked about the Bodhi resolve. In practical terms, okay, so the sutras speak of Bodhi resolve as like you make one big vow, one big intention, and from then on, everything changes. Okay, but if you had listened to my explanation earlier, in reality, we make small Bodhi resolves all the time. For example, if you have not taken the 5 precepts before, or you haven't taken refuge before, and you suddenly decide that you want to, you know it's going to be hard. Okay, why? Because you're going to give up your favorite foods, but you know it's a good thing to do. And you finally summon enough conviction, enough confidence in yourself, confidence in the Dharma, the Buddha, and you take that step to take the precepts and take refuge. That's a genuine Bodhi resolve, because at that level, that's the best that you can do at that time. Then after a while, you may encounter the 8 precepts and it may seem really, really difficult, but you decide, okay, I want to try the 8 precepts for 24 hours. And you do that. And that's a Bodhi resolve as well, because they all accumulate to the one point where it becomes a great Bodhi resolve. Okay, so if you're able to always be mindful of the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, and whenever you have you want to go back to unwholesome habits, but at the same time you shouldn't, and you make the right decision not to, you can consider like a very small Bodhi resolve. And then whenever like you do something really great, like the 5 precepts, or you take you join a week-long session at a temple or meditation session, or you take the lay bodhisattva precepts, those are considered like fairly large Bodhi resolves. Okay, but from the small, then you go to the big, and eventually the big becomes your normal state of existence. Okay, and then before you know it, become a bodhisattva and you become a Buddha. All right, we will not look at the Buddha's reply. We will keep that for next week. For now, I'm going to call on Julie. Julie, are you ready to share your story? Or if it's a short story, you want me to read it as well? I'm fine. Okay, you have
Yeah.
unmuted. Okay, go ahead, Julie.
Yeah, maybe you can read it. I can have additional things to mention because it follow with another experience, a short experience in Vancouver.
Okay, so I'm going to read your text. You say you have a real experience regarding plagues at Gold Coast Dharma Realm. At one of the events, you asked your cousin sister if she wanted to write a plaque for her deceased son who died in an accident, which was about 20 years ago. And she did that, and that night she saw her deceased son appear in front of her, probably in a dream, asking her why she is so busy. Is that right?
Yeah, I asked her to write because it was a precept for the date, and because she was already there, because you need someone to hold the plug. It's not an ordinary plug, but it's a precept for the date where you have to hold the plug. So that's why she wrote it. So I did not know until the next day. My friend was telling me that she was crying the whole morning and hugging Shi Fashi and all that. Then I asked her the reason why. She was so touched by the experience. So when I was in Canada for the Golden Monastery opening, I met one chef who was cooking for the people there attending an assembly, the opening ceremony and an assembly. So there was an assembly, and I thought, hey, why not you also write a plaque, because I heard that she has a sister who also died. Then I told her about my sister's experience. So he wrote. So that night, he dreamt of his sister in a boat. He asked his sister, where are you going? So the sister said that, oh, I'm going to this number 25 something. It is a place, it's actually the address of the monastery. So he told me about the story. I was so surprised to hear it. 248. He said, I'm going to 248. So the next morning, he realized that the monastery address is 248.
Okay. Is that all?
That's all. Yeah, that's my
Okay.
experience of the plug.
Okay, thanks, Julie. Yes, there are what Julie has shared is actually fairly happens very often. People who have plaques they write plaques for people who are no longer around, and then they have encounters either in dreams, usually in dreams, and positive experiences. That's a fairly common occurrence. Yeah. Okay. All right. Let me see. I'm going to call on, let me see how much time I have left. Okay, just let me share, get to Swilling's question from last week about oil lamps. Okay, so this is what Bodhidharma has to say. Bodhidharma is known as the first patriarch of China. He was patriarch number 28 in India, and then he went to China to spread the proper Dharma, and he is known as the first patriarch of China. So he left behind a teaching called the Zen teaching of Bodhidharma, and someone asked him a question. He said, the question was, throughout the sutras, the Buddha tells mortals, meaning people like us, they can achieve enlightenment by performing such meritorious works as building monasteries, casting statues, burning incense, scattering flowers, lighting eternal lamps or oil lamps, practicing all 6 periods of the day and night, walking around stupas, observing fasts, and worshipping. But if beholding the mind or seeing one nature includes all other practices, then such works as this would appear redundant. So this question is about all the different practices that the Buddha describes in the sutras. And the questioning Bodhidharma, so Bodhidharma is saying all these practices all point to one thing, seeing, to enable you to see your true nature. So the question is, if that's the whole point, then why do all these practices? Or are you contradicting what the Buddha's instructions? Okay, so this is Bodhidharma's reply. He said, the sutras of the Buddha contain countless metaphors. Because mortals have shallow minds and don't understand anything deep, the Buddha used the tangible to represent the sublime. People who seek blessings by concentrating on external works instead of internal cultivation are attempting the possible. Okay, so what does this mean? First of all, the word metaphors. Metaphors means you say one thing, but you mean another thing. Okay, for example, like Moby Dick, the novel Moby Dick, if you just read it without, you just read it casually, you think it's about someone, a fisherman who has a grudge against this white whale and spends his whole life going after the whale. Okay, but if you really think about it and ponder, it's actually a bit more. It's about someone wrestling with their inner demons in their own lives. So the whale is just a metaphor. The whale represents something else. So that's what metaphors mean. So Bodhidharma says, because people who are like us, who are ignorant, we haven't okay, maybe ignorance is a wrong. We don't know what we don't know. Okay, sometimes we don't even know what we know, and we don't even know where we came from. We don't know what are our own causes and conditions that have led us into this current form of existence. We don't know what's real, what's not. Even if we just compare our reality with like say other species like animals, there are a lot of things that we can't see. We can't smell like how dogs and pigs can smell. We can't see like some birds have a lot better eyesight. They can see different wavelengths of light that are totally oblivious to us. They can navigate. Turtles and fish can navigate themselves around the world, whereas we just spin around 3 times, open our eyes, we get totally lost, kind of thing. Okay, all right. So human beings think they are very great, but maybe not. So anyway, Bodhidharma says people who seek blessings by concentrating on external works instead of internal cultivation are attempting the impossible. What does this mean? External works means the form. You do the form, you do the outside. Internal cultivation means transforming yourself, transforming your habits, and purifying your karmic seeds. So external would be something like lighting oil lamps. Internal would be something that leads to you being a different person before you light the oil lamp and after you light the oil lamp. You become a different person. You are more patient. You are more tolerant. You have more loving kindness. You take care of yourself better. You can take care of other people better. That kind of transformation. Okay, so what does it mean, lighting oil lamps? Bodhidharma explains, he says, the eternal lamp represents perfect awareness. Likening the illumination of awareness to that of a lamp, those who seek liberation see their body as the lamp, their mind as the wick, the addition of discipline as its oil, and the power of wisdom as its flame. Okay? So a lamp, all right, you can imagine any kind of lamp that you want as long as an oil lamp. The light of the lamp represents awareness or mindfulness. The what you should be, the attention that you should be gathering inside, instead of paying attention to sights, sounds, like you hear a sound, people call your name, you turn your head, you get immersed in music, you watch a movie and you get lost in the movie, engrossed in the movie, or you watch one of those dramas and you start crying and feeling sad for them, or angry. Instead of loosening yourself, instead of losing yourself in your environment, as you gather back your awareness within to yourself, okay, that's what the light of a lamp represents. And then what is the lamp? Your body. How you conduct your body. Is it according to precepts or not? What is the wick that enables the flame? Your mind. How are you using your mind? And then the oil that burns, that's discipline. That's precepts. That's virtue. That's your character. And then the flame is the wisdom that arises when you put all this together and you light it and you get a flame. That's the power of wisdom. So when you see an oil lamp and you light an oil lamp, what do you see? Do you think of all this? Do you think about gathering your concentration in terms of meditation? Or do you see it as, oh, I'm lighting an oil lamp because the sutra says it's good? Are you just doing the form, or are you doing something that leads to an inner transformation? Okay, so Bodhidharma continues, says, by lighting this lamp of perfect awareness, they dispel all darkness and delusion. And by passing this Dharma on to others, they're able to use one lamp to light thousands of lamps. And because these lamps likewise light countless other lamps, their light lasts forever. Okay, so it's not you literally taking your lamp and lighting another person's lamp, the candle, one candle to another, and the whole room full of light. I've used that metaphor before. Okay, when you have wisdom and you lead others to wisdom, and so they have the wisdom to lead other people to wisdom, which is what the Buddhas and the great Bodhisattvas are doing. That's what it means when they say the light will last forever. So when you come to certain temples, okay, there will be a sign saying, oh, by lighting oil lamps, you get all these blessings. In return, you get bright eyes. In return, you become very smart. You get a lot of blessings and all that. They don't tell you how, they don't explain the cause and effect. So when you take cause and effect out of the equation, what does it become? Mysterious. From mysterious, it becomes superstition. Because why? It belongs to the realm of faith. You believe that it's something good, but you have no idea how it works. No idea at all. You just think that magically you do this, you light oil lamps, magically something will happen in the Dharma realm that will cause you to be born as nice big eyes, beautiful appearance, blah, 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 in the future. So the act of lighting lamps itself, the physical act of lighting lamps in itself is a good thing. Okay, you do generate karmic seeds that bring you closer to the Dharma, but that's not going to end birth and death. That's not going to end your afflictions at all. Okay, it brings you closer to the Dharma, yes, but it does not contribute directly to arising of wisdom. Okay, so as you light, when you come and you light candles or you turn on the switch, some places they use electronic lamps now. As you turn the switch on or you use a LED candle, you're only doing that to remind yourself, okay, I have to practice meditation after this. As I bring light to the Buddha's altar, I have to bring light in myself so I don't continue my life through ignorance. So that's what it means. You have an external act to remind you of what you need to do internally. If not, you can spend trillions and trillions of lifetimes lighting oil lamps, and you still be lighting oil lamps after trillions and trillions of lifetimes if you don't understand what it means internally. All right? Okay. So then Bodhidharma continues. He says, long ago, there was a Buddha named Dipankara. Okay, that's the name of the Buddha we read earlier, or lamp lighter. He lights lamps. His name is Dipankara. This was the meaning of his name. Say, but fools don't understand the metaphors of the Tathagata. Tathagata means the Buddha. Says, persisting in delusions and clinging to the tangible, the light lamps of oil, and think that by illuminating the interiors of buildings, they are following the Buddha's teaching. So how foolish. The light released by a Buddha from one curl between his brows can illuminate countless worlds, meaning the wisdom of the Buddha. Say, an oil lamp is no help. Then he ends with, or do you think otherwise? He says, do you disagree? So a lot of in the sutras, the form of the practice is always used to represent something else. A lot of it is not explained because at that time, people understood. At that time was a proper Dharma age. When the Buddha said something like lighting a lamp, people quickly understood, oh, okay, lamp illuminate lamp illuminate the altar. Outwards, inside, I need to illuminate myself with wisdom. So it is just like, okay, so for all of us who are doing Buddhist practices, like you are bowing, you're lighting incense, you make vows and intentions and all these Buddhist practices, those are the form that, they have a physical appearance. You have to ask yourself, how does that lead to an inner transformation of yourself? So just like wearing clothes do not, if you wear a monastic's clothes, okay, you can walk to a shop, okay, you can buy the sash, you can buy the Tang Dynasty robe that monastics wear, but that does not make you a monastic. You can shave your head, you can eat your one meal a day, you can, act like you're a monk, wear monk's shoes and take a monk's bag, but that does not make you a monastic. Your precepts or your character and your way, the inner transformation, that's what makes you a monastic. Okay, so Buddhist practices are like that. When you join the session, the 7-day session in reciting the Buddha's name and all those things, all those are meant to lead to an inner transformation. But you have to understand what the outer practices mean in order to shape your inner self. All right. Okay. I see everyone's questions. We will do that in the next class. Saha, we are running out of time. Do you want to maybe say something? I'm so sorry, Saha. I know I wanted to give you some time. We'll do that next week as well. But do you want to start off by saying something first, Saha?
Amito for Dharma Master. If you don't have time, I can share it for next class. It's okay.
Okay, you will join next class next week?
Yes, I will. Yes.
Okay, all right, good. Then you can have more time to formulate what you want to say. All right. Okay, for now, we will dedicate merit. Okay, let me bring up the slide. And other people's questions for today, we'll also do it next week. Where is it? Okay. Okay, I'm going to ask everyone to join me in putting our palms together. May every living being, our minds as one and radiant with light, share the fruits of peace with hearts of goodness, luminous and bright. If people hear and see how hands and hearts can find in giving unity, may our minds awake to great compassion, wisdom, and to joy. May kindness find reward. May all who sorrow leave their grief and pain. May this boundless light dispel the darkness of our endless night. Because our hearts are one, this world of pain turns into paradise. May all become compassionate and wise. May all become compassionate and wise. Okay, let's do 3 bows to the Buddha. First bow. Second bow. Third bow. Half bow. Bowing respect to the Rebel Master. Second bow. Third bow. Half bow. Okay, so next week we'll come back and look more at what Bodhidharma has to say at the end of the class, because I think it's everyone should know. And we'll see you next week. Okay, Amitabha everyone.